Basic Cooperative Course, Module 1, Lesson 2, Origin of Cooperatives. In the first lesson, we learned about the dual nature of the cooperative as an association of people and a business enterprise that have unique characteristics. These characteristics distinguish them from other organizations and businesses. We also learned that this uniqueness is centered on members, who are both owners and users of the cooperative enterprise. In the world of business, where profit motive and self-interest are the norm, cooperatives are indeed different. How did this come about? Why was there a need to invent a new kind of enterprise that puts people over capital, and a new way of doing business that puts service above profit? To answer this question, we have to go back to history and trace the roots of the cooperative idea to a few but determined social reformers who sought the deliverance of people from the excesses of capitalism during the Industrial Revolution in Europe. We have to tell the story of the 28 impoverished men and women who put the ideas of these reformers into action in the small town of Rochdale in England in 1844. Here is their story, the story of the cooperative movement that spread across the world.
Umusbong ang samahang kooperatiba sa panahon ng krisis at matinding kahirapan. Pinangunahan ito ng mga manggagawa noong panahong industrial sa Inglaterra noong 1800s. Ang panahong industrial ay panahong mabilis na umuunlad ang antas ng produksyon sa iba't ibang pabrika sa Europa. Sunod-sunod na nakaimbento ng iba't ibang uri ng makina na nakapagpapabilis sa produksyon at transportasyon ng iba't ibang mga bagay. Bagaman naging mabilis ang pagdami ng mga pabrika sa kalunsuran, nanatiling mababa ang pagsahod at marahas ang mga kondisyon ng paggawa. Ang trabaho ay tumatagal mula 10 hanggang 16 na oras sa isang araw. Maging ang mga bata at babae ay nagtatrabaho sa nakaririmarim na kondisyon.
Well, the background then was people live actually in abject poverty, suffering, failure to satisfy what we mention as the needs of people, especially among the lower class, the workers, the agricultural workers, fishers. Here in this case, because of the Industrial Revolution, factory workers. So there was a very big gap between those who have and those who haven't.
Sa patuloy na paglikas ng mga mamamayan mula nayon patungong syudad at pabrika, tuluyang nawalan rin ang kanilang kakayanan na makapagtanim at makapagtustos ng sariling pangangailangan, kaya't nagsimula silang umasa sa mga tindahang magbebenta ng mga produktong kailangan. Dahil dito, lalong yumaman ang mga mamumuhunan at lalong naghirap ang mga manggagawa.
There were more losers than winners. So in that case, so much of the people, the ordinary workers, were left alone to fend for themselves. And the gap between those who have, the wealthy, and those who don't have, became wider and wider.
Bagaman may mga naunang eksperimento at sulatin ukol dito si Robert Owen at William King, ang kinikilalang unang nagtatag ng formal na kooperatibang samahan ay mga manggagawa rin. Itinatag ng 28 manggagawa sa pabrika ng bulak mula sa Rochdale, Hilagang Inglaterra, ang kauna-unahang modernong kooperatiba na tinawag na Rochdale Equitable Pioneer Society noong 1844. Marami sa kanila ang paulit-ulit na nagiging biktima ng pandaraya ng mga negosyante, tulad ng pandaraya sa timbang o kaya kalidad ng produktong ibinebenta ng mga tindahan.
Ang esensya na pagtugon, sariling pagtugon sa pangailangan yon, doon nagbuo yung konsepto ng sariling sikap na walang ibang tutulong sa kanila kung hindi sila.
The money that should have gone to the capitalist, if it were a capitalist-owned enterprise, would be profit to the capitalists. But when they themselves engage in these structures, it would be savings on that part.
Noong unay, nakapagbenta lamang sila ng 4 na produkto: harina, oatmeal, asukal at mantikilya. Agad itong lumago at dumami ang mga kasapi nang napag-alaman ng mga tao na ang tindahan ng mga Rochdale Pioneers ay hindi nandadaya sa timbang, hindi naglalagay ng chalk sa harina, at hindi nagpapatong ng napakalaking tubo sa produkto. Binigyang halaga ng mga pioneers ang mga values at principles sa pagpapatakbo ng kooperatiba. Pinakitunguhan ang lahat ng mamimili ng may katapatan at respeto. Ang mga kasapi ay nagbibigay ng sabing puhunan sa negosyo ng Coop, kung kaya't binigyang halaga rin ang karapatan ng bawat kasapi na patakbuhin ang sariling negosyo. Kung gayon, ang mga mamimili ay hindi lamang customer, kundi kamay-ari din. Ang mga values at principles na ito ay nananatiling gabay sa lahat ng kooperatiba sa buong mundo hanggang sa kasalukuyan.
Ang pinaka-basic na konsepto ng cooperative is yung self-help, pagtulong sa sarili. The cooperative starts with the individual. So dapat magaling sa kanya yung realization na yan. Sa kooperatiba, one side is self-help, the other side is mutual help.
Unti-unting lumaganap din ang kooperatiba sa buong mundo. Sa Alemanya, pinangunahan ni Frederick Wilhelm Raiffeisen ang pagdedeposito ng kapital sa kooperatiba. Dito nagsimula ang kauna-unahang bangkong kooperatiba. Noong 1901, pinamunuan naman ni Alphonse Desjardins ang kanyang dayosisa upang makabuo ng kooperatibang makapag-aangat sa mga tao mula sa kahirapan.
Nakita ni Alphonse Desjardins ang magandang nangyayari sa kanyang pag-aaral sa bansang Inglaterra, Alemanya, ibang bahagi ng Europa. So, naging buo sa kanya at naging klaro sa kanya na ito pala ang paraan para makatulong. Meron din particular na pangailangan sa bansang Amerika na natugunan nila. Ito yung pagpapalaganap ng mga electric cooperatives. Kaya kinukonsider na napakalakas ng electric cooperatives sa bansang Amerika. Nabalitaan din ito nitong isang philanthropist, ang pangalan niya ay Edward Filin. Nakita niya kung paano ito nakakatulong. Nakita rin niya yung nangyayari sa Inglaterra, sa Europa, sa Canada. Unti-unti niya itong na-introduce sa Asia.
Sa Pilipinas naman, may formal at di-formal na simula ng Coop. Tampok ang konsepto ng kooperasyon sa mga sinaunang Filipino ang kaugaliang bayanihan. Kung kinakailangang lumipat ng bahay, nagtutulong-tulungan ang mga magkakapit-bahay na buhatin ang kubo ng walang bayad. Gayun din, susuktian niya ito kung sakaling may iba namang nais maglipat ng bahay. Mayroon din tayong tradisyon na tinatawag na palusong, kung saan, tulad ng bayanihan, ang nais magtanim o mag-ani ng palay ay kusang tinutulungan ng kanyang mga kababayan. Sa sandaling sila naman ang mangailangan ng tulong ay inaasahang sila rin ay tutulungan ng walang bayad. Dito makikita ang pagsama-sama ng lakas kapital ng mga tao upang matulungan nila ang kanilang sarili na siyang esensya ng samahang kooperatiba. Ang unang naitalang kooperatiba sa Pilipinas ay itinatag ng ating pambansang bayani, si Dr. Jose Rizal, nang ipatapon siya sa dapitan. Nalaman niya ang ukol sa kooperatiba mula sa kanyang pag-aaral sa Europa, kung kaya't nagtatag siya ng isang supply and marketing co-op upang makatulong sa mga magsasaka sa dapitan na maibenta ang kanilang ani sa tamang halaga.
Unang uri ng kooperatiba nagsimula talaga sa Pilipinas, no? Yung mga agricultural cooperatives. Pero ang matagumpay na uri ng kooperatiba, yung tinatawag na credit union, nagsimula yan sa Bigan, Ilocos, mga misyonaryo, nagsimula niya. At ang layunin ng credit union o credit cooperative is to promote the habit of thrift, savings, and the wise use of credit.
Itong 1960 naman, itong mga missionaries that set up Silliman University organized the first consumer cooperative. Dahil ang academic and university background, lumaganap naman yun. Noong 1950 na ipasa na yung Rural Credit Association pagtugon sa problema ng mga magsasaka. Kaya kung mapansin mo, 1960s, simula nung Vatican II, ay lumaganap na ang mga Paris-based cooperatives. Perpetual help sa Dumaguete, yung perpetual help sa sa Tacloban, yan naman ay pinalaganap ng mga Redemptorist. And then, sa Mindanao, may pinalaganap din ang mga Notre Dame. And then, pinaligawanag din ng mga Jesuits, yung Society of Jesus, ang cooperative sa Xavier University.
Noong taong 2000, nasa 800 milyong katao na ang mga kasapi ng kooperatiba at may 100 milyong manggagawa. Sinasabi ngayon ng mga eksperto na ang pinakamainam na tugon sa pandaigdigang krisis sa ekonomiya ay ang pagkakaroon ng mga values at principles sa pagpapatakbo ng negosyo upang hindi masilaw sa paghahangad ng malaking tubo. Sa ngayon, malaking bahagi ng ekonomiya ng mundo ay pinapatakbo ng mga kooperatiba.
Sa Japan, 99% of farmers are members of cooperatives. The government consults them for policies in agriculture.
The Koreans seem to have a fertile ground for the development of cooperative because their culture was very supportive of cooperation that is indigenous to the culture of the Koreans. They were able to combine this with the new technology, so they did not hesitate to apply new technology in the management of their cooperatives.
Unti-unti, nare-realize din ng maraming nagtatagoy ng kooperatiba itong pangangailangan na maging matapat doon sa mga prinsipyo, filosofiya at saka practices ng kooperatiba.
Dahil sa mga kooperatiba, nabigyan ng pagkakataon ang maraming mga tao na kapag-aral man o hindi, mahirap man o profesional, na maiangat ang kanilang kabuhayan at dangal, magkaroon ng patuloy na karunungan at makatulong sa kapwa.
They realized, and they knew it right from the beginning, that it's a business enterprise. However, it is a business with the heart, they say, in the sense that in their coming together, they inculcated certain values which are rarely, or we do not see that in ordinary commercial enterprises among the capitalists.
But it's an alternative system. They're offering an alternative, especially for people who are excluded, let's say, excluded from society or from the economy because they have limited means. In the Philippines, we need to remind ourselves of this kasi right now, those same problems like extreme poverty, exploitation, injustice, nangyayari pa sa atin yun eh. And the cooperative is the only way, the only institution that can provide them not the refuge, but the capacity to improve themselves.
May asenso sa pagtutulungan. Anuman ang adya ng bukas, ang mahalagay, sama-sama pa rin tayong haharapin ang hamon sa pamamagitan ng samahang kooperatiba. Yan ang kasaysayan ng Coop.
There are at least 3 lessons that can be drawn from the history of cooperatives. First, cooperatives were born out of economic conditions that drove many people to poverty and subjected them to economic exploitation, making them vulnerable to social injustice and inequality. The cooperative became the means by which poor people were able to pull themselves up, at first to survive the harsh economic climate, but ultimately, in the words of Moses Cody, one of the pioneers of the cooperative movement in Canada, to transform themselves into masters of their own destiny. This was what happened in England, and in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia, and in other parts of the world where cooperatives took root and prospered. Second, people did not form cooperatives only to satisfy their individual needs. On their own, they could not do this, but by combining resources with others, they were able to gain strength in numbers and the capacity to satisfy the needs of all. For the pioneers, moreover, it was more than satisfying economic needs. They fostered fundamental change in society and aimed at establishing a new economic and social order, where people worked and lived in dignity and were free from all kinds of exploitation and injustice. Without this higher purpose, cooperatives would have degenerated into independent enterprises, pursuing individual interests. Instead, cooperatives became a movement and became the mainstay of the social economy in many countries to this day. Third, cooperatives in the Philippines can only be relevant to our society. They address the economic and social problems faced by the many poor among us. The same problems faced by the early cooperatives are very much evident in Philippine society today. Cooperatives had to be seen to be part of the solution to these problems. As in other countries around the world, cooperatives cannot do this alone. They can do much more if they work together as a movement and contribute collectively to national development. One final note on the history of cooperatives. Before the 28 Rochdale pioneers established the first consumers' cooperative in 1844, there were previous attempts to organize cooperatives in Europe, but all of these failed. Only the cooperative store in Rochdale succeeded, and one of the reasons for this is the pioneers' enunciation of the first set of cooperative principles. By applying these principles in the business of the cooperative, the Rochdale pioneers differentiated it from other profit-oriented businesses. They quickly established a reputation in the market as an enterprise with the interests of its members and consumers in general at heart. They also demonstrated to other cooperatives that followed them, first in England and later across the world, that the strength of cooperatives lies in the observance of these principles. It is these principles that we will focus on in our next lesson.